Resident Evil, without a doubt, is one of my all-time favorite series ever. I've beaten just about every single game that they ever made. The good, the bad, and the fucking ugly. And today, I thought it would be appropriate to just sit down and talk about this series. Give it the love that it deserves by making a tier list. Not the most original thing ever, no, but it does allow me to talk about a lot of Resident Evil in a very short amount of time, and that's something I want to do. Now maybe at some point, I'll go through and actually review a lot of these individual games, because I do have a lot to say about them, and I don't want this video to be like 30 hours long. So I will leave some things out, but I'm mostly going to be addressing my main points of what I like, what I don't like. I will also be ranking these games on how much I want to replay them or how much I have replayed them. Because some of these games, I've beaten them like a million times. And other games, I've beaten them once, and that was good enough for me. So without further ado, let's start where it all began.
Resident Evil.
1996 on the Sony PlayStation, we are putting this bad boy right in S tier. This was a huge game for me growing up. This, basically, the reason why I love survival horror is because of Resident Evil and Silent Hill, the old games. And this is my favorite style of horror games. You know, puzzles, a little bit of action elements, nice, interesting atmosphere with big bosses and grotesque monsters. It changed the industry. There were horror games before Resident Evil, believe it or not. There was Alone in the Dark and Clock Tower. Now I love both of those series, but Resident Evil, frankly, was just better. The horror was better. The action was better. Just everything about it was better. Except for maybe the voice acting. But honestly, that's a part of the reason why I love the game so much.
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right. Now it's Wesker's time to disappear. I don't know what's going on.
Well, it can't be helped. Jill, here's a lockpick. It might be handy if you, the master of unlocking, take it with you.
Thanks. Maybe I'll need it.
Everybody remembers walking into the room and seeing the very first zombie. This was also the very first game I ever wanted to speedrun. Before this, I had just played games and never really felt the need to try to beat it as fast as possible. But with this game, the beauty of it is, if you beat the game in under 3 hours, you would unlock the infinite ammo rocket launcher. And if you beat the game in under 4 hours, you would unlock a closet key that would allow you to change your costumes. So, yes, in a way it is also just fun to see how fast of a time you can get, but there were some real fun rewards here. I think the fastest I ever beat this game was around like an hour and a half. I was like 18 years old, and I have a picture of that time somewhere. This is also the Resident Evil that I've beaten the most versions of. I've beaten the PlayStation 1 version, I've beaten the Saturn version, I've beaten the DS version. I've beaten Biohazard, which, if you don't know, in Japan, Resident Evil is called Biohazard.
Biohazard.
There was also Director's Cut, which, in my opinion, is not really that great. It's not a real Director's Cut because when the game originally came to the United States, a lot of it was censored. And Director's Cuts are normally supposed to have, well, the uncut content, but Director's Cut doesn't. But if it's the only way you can play the original Resident Evil, it'll do you just fine. But I just have to tell you, avoid the DualShock version. The music in it is fucking terrible, and it honestly like ruins the experience. If you think I'm exaggerating, just look it up on YouTube It's outrageous how terrible it is. That was Resident Evil 1. It's time to move on to its sequel. Now we move on to my favorite entry in the series, Resident Evil 2. This game is a perfect template on how to do a sequel right. It took everything that was great about the original and built upon it. I mean, everything in this game is just phenomenal. We got to see more of the world. We got to see Raccoon City. We got to see so many cool locations and kick-ass monsters. The game is on multiple discs. The music is incredible. This is the first appearance of Leon and Claire, and I mean, what a wonderful way to just jump on the gaming landscape. There's a few games that I go back to once a year, and this game is certainly one of them. I mean, every time around Halloween, I'm always in the mood to play some Resident Evil 2. It's Resident Evil 1, but better. They were playing around with some new mechanics in this game, like Mr. X, and the whole like William Birkin sort of transformation shit was just so cool. This is the first appearance of Hunk and Tofu. This is one of the greatest games ever made. Now, if we're talking about what's the best version of Resident Evil 2, my favorite would probably be Biohazard 2 on the Dreamcast. It just has so much content and love put into it. But frankly, the PlayStation 1 version is excellent. The DualShock version adds in some additional content, so I would also recommend getting that. Like I said, the Dreamcast version is wonderful. There's also a version of this on GameCube. That's an excellent version as well. There was a PC port as well, but good luck getting your hands on that. Honestly, this game is just perfect to me. I love it, love it, love it, love it, and always am looking forward to replaying this one again.
Resident Evil.
Now we arrive at Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. And I'm gonna be honest, this is one of the Resident Evils that I never quite played as much, never ran through it as much as the other games. I put it personally in B tier. I think this game is really fun, I think it's a good time, and I love Nemesis.
Jill!
Brad!
We've got to... Jill! Help!
No! Brad?
Like, he is such a fucking cool villain. He's a cool fucking monster. He has a great design. But I'm not gonna lie, this game pisses me off more than the other PS1 Resident Evils. There are two main problems I have with this game. Number one, the whole dodging mechanic. It is super weird and inconsistent. And also, it really isn't that good. When you dodge an attack, you don't have iframes. So you can still get hit during your dodge, which is ridiculous. Also, some of the boss fights in this game drive me crazy. The two that I think of in particular are the Gravedigger boss fight and the Nemesis boss fight where you gotta shoot the valves to cause the acid to spill onto him. The Gravedigger boss fight is centered around this dodging mechanic. It's super weird, it's super inconsistent, it never feels quite right. And I know it's stupid because they never revisited this sort of idea of executing it like this until its remake. Also, the Valve sort of boss fight with Nemesis is super lame because you have to shoot the valves to get the acid to spill on him. But sometimes when I'm aiming for the valve, I'll still hit him. So you have to be like super specific on where you want to be and where you want to aim. It's really weird and it can be really frustrating, especially if you don't run through it numerous times. I also find out that this game just loves to throw in enemies back in areas that you already cleared. This game does it the most of any of the other Resident Evils. You'll clear out a bunch of enemies and it'll throw in more. Makes it feel like you just wasted a shit ton of ammo for no ass reason at all. You know, the main protagonist of this game is Jill. I love her in this game. She's wonderful. Also, I don't mind Carlos. When I was younger, I didn't really care for him too much, but as I've grown older, he doesn't really bother me all that much. It was also cool to see the return of hunters. But yeah, this Resident Evil 3 is not one of those games I come back to very much. If you want the best experience for Resident Evil 3, just pick up the GameCube version, if you can find it, that is.
Resident Evil Survivor.
Now we come to the final game released on the PlayStation 1, Resident Evil Survivor. And I know everybody is going to think I am clinically insane, but I think this game is in C tier. Remember, I'm rating these on how much I enjoyed them and how much I've replayed them. Yes, obviously, Resident Evil Survivor is not a very good game. It controls like crap, at least in the United States. It looks fine for PlayStation 1, but the problem with Survivor is that, well, this game was originally meant to be played with a light gun. And that's, honestly, that sounds really cool. But in the US version, they removed the light gun compatibility. So basically what happens is you just hold down R1 and drag the cursor across the screen. It does not control very well at all. There's also a really funny exploit with this game. If you're not looking at certain enemies, they literally cannot hit you. So if you're coming up against a hunter, I shit you not, just look at a wall. He won't be able to hit you. It's absolutely fucking hilarious. To me, this game is so bad, it's good. I probably beat this game like 4 times in a year because I wanted to show it off to so many people. It is extremely entertaining. The voice acting in this game is actually worse than the original Resident Evil.
Vincent.
Who is this? Vincent? Who's that? Wait. Am I Vincent?
Vincent, you are a murderer. A murderer.
A murderer? What are you talking about? Answer me. Who did I kill? A picture. No. This is me. I am Vincent. It was all my fault. Who are you?
Wait. Please don't kill me. I didn't know anything about you then.
Stop.
It is so bad, but that's what makes it so entertaining. And honestly, one good aspect of this game is that there are so many branching paths. I said that I went through this game 4 times in 1 year, and I saw totally different areas each time I played it. It was honestly kind of mind-boggling how much fun I've had with Resident Evil Survivor. I don't really recommend to play this if you are looking for a die-hard serious Resident Evil. If you're looking for some goofy-ass game that is just lots of fun, and you just want to pop open a couple beers and share it with your buddies, this is the game for you. Endless amounts of entertainment and so many just So many wonderful moments.
Resident Evil.
Next up on the list is Resident Evil Code Veronica X. And I can't lie, I have to give this game a C tier. I have always had trouble really loving Code Veronica because it does so many things really well, and then it does so many things extremely poorly. What does it do well? Well, number one, it's still that classic Resident Evil feel, but this time everything's all in 3D. No pre-rendered backgrounds whatsoever. So, for some people that might be kind of a turnoff because it can look a little funky, but for me personally, I think this game looks great. This was like exclusive to the Sega Dreamcast. It looks great for the system. There's some pretty cool weapons in this game. You know, you get like some dual weapons here and there. That's pretty fun. You get to play as Claire Redfield again. Always a plus. Love me some Claire. And yeah, that's about all the good things I want to say, at least for now. Because this game, ever since I was a kid, has always pissed me off. The number one problem I have with this game is how it handles progression. So when we look back at previous Resident Evils, all of them take place, for the most part, in one big secluded location. You know, the mansion, the police station, everything like that, right? This game kind of goes into the route of Resident Evil 3 and kind of does multiple locations at once, but it does it far worse than Nemesis ever could. The problems with this game are, it's so big, there's a million places to go, you have solutions to puzzles in different buildings. It makes just going through the game feel like a slog. And if that isn't bad enough, this is also the hardest Resident Evil without a doubt. The first half of Code Veronica is easily so fucking hard, dude. Enemies respawn. You can soft lock yourself if you don't save up enough resources properly. So you could be like all the way towards the end of the game and you can't beat the final boss because you don't have enough ammo to actually beat him. Now granted, this is something that could happen in the previous titles, but it is way more amplified in Code Veronica. It has some of the most obnoxious enemies in the series. It's the Bandersnatchers are easily the worst part of this game. They can hit you from off screen, and with this sort of style of control, that does not feel very fun. That feels very frustrating. And with the first 3 games, they realized that there were certain things that you just shouldn't do with this control scheme, but they kind of threw that out the window with this game. Also, let's talk about something real quick that I personally love about this game, and it's Steve. I know a lot of people fucking hate Steve. They think he's whiny. They think he's annoying. They hate his voice actor. I love it. I love how bad his voice acting is in this game.
Sorry about that little misunderstanding, but I thought you were another one of those
Shut up! Make one wrong move and I'll shoot.
Relax, beautiful. I said I was sorry. My name's Steve. I don't want you following me, lady. You'll only slow me down.
Truthfully, that is like one of the reasons why I come back to play Code Veronica. Just to hear how bad his voice acting is. This game also has sort of like an anime kind of blend to it. It feels a little bit out of place, I'm not gonna lie. But in another way, I also think it's kind of cool. I'm torn because like I really, really want to love this game. I've wanted to love it ever since I was a kid. But quite frankly, I just can't give it any more than C tier. For me, it's right in the middle. There's really not much I want to really comment on either. I will say though, this is one of the most forgotten Resident Evils in this series. I'm pretty sure you can pick it up on PlayStation Network and Xbox Live at the moment. Although I know the Xbox version is going to be taken off here in like July or something like that. It's not on Steam. There's no remake of it. So this is one of the more forgotten entries in the series. And that is actually a point. This game absolutely deserves a remake. I hope that happens because this is one of the more forgotten titles in Resident Evil. Unless you played it back in the day or you grew up with it, you probably don't know that this game even exists. And that's a shame, because even though I think it's right in the middle, I still think it's worth playing.
Resident Evil.
Now we're going to jump right back up into S tier with the Resident Evil 1 remake. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not only one of the best Resident Evils, not only one of the best survival horror games, not only one of the best games of its generation, it is one of the best games ever made. With whole new areas, whole new mechanics, and a brand new enemy, this game is easily a must-have for anybody who's a fan of horror games. I remember the first time I ever saw a Crimson Head. It scared me so fucking bad that I'm pretty sure I farted out my colon, alright? The idea of killing an enemy and then it rises back up and chases you, it's faster, stronger, scarier, was a perfect idea for this game. This is one of the Resident Evils that no matter how many times I've beaten it, I've never been able to be super comfortable with it. With some of the earlier titles like Resident Evil 1 and 2, I can go through those games with my eyes closed. I know how to do everything in it. This game, to this day, can still give me trouble with the Crimson Heads alone. Not even to mention the new layout, the new areas, the new enemies. I mean, the whole side story with Lisa Trevor is some of the most fucked up shit we've ever seen in a Resident Evil. The beauty of this game is that it used to be kind of niche, alright? It was locked to the GameCube and the Wii, but then it got ported to everything. There is no excuse to not pick up this game. You know, some people might miss the cheesy and corny dialogue, and to an extent, I miss it as well, but I love the new horror atmosphere that this game has. I love how it still has pre-rendered backgrounds. I love how it still has this overwhelming sense of dread. It's one of the scariest games I think you could ever play. It never lets up. I really don't have very much else to say other than you just need to go and play it. I feel like this is one of the more underrated Resident Evils. Admittedly, this is one of the games that I never beat nearly as much as, say, Resident Evil 2 or the original Resident Evil on PlayStation. But man, whenever I pop this game in, it is just survival horror bliss. If you want to play this game nowadays, it's super easy. It's on Xbox One, PS4, and PC. Please, by all means, pick it up. You will not regret it at all.
Zero.
We finally arrive at our very first stinker, folks. Resident Evil 0. I hate this game. I hate the partner management. I hate the item management. I hate the enemies. I hate this game's base mechanics. And when you hate a game's base mechanics, you hate the game. But it's a damn shame too, because Resident Evil 0 starts off so cool. The opening train section is phenomenal, right? It's great. All the way up until the last part of the train section, because that's when you start running into the game's critical flaw, the item management. In every other Resident Evil, there was a universal item box that you had throughout your adventure. It didn't matter what you put in there. You could put something in there at the beginning of the game and it would be in that box at the very end of the game. It's a very useful system that sort of cuts back on backtracking, because that's what these games are all about. Backtracking through areas, discovering new locations, and trying to find your way out. This game easily does backtracking the absolute worst. The idea of dropping items around the map isn't a terrible idea, but the total removal of the item box makes me loathe this fucking game. Here's the thing about Resident Evil 0, right? If you want to move from one level to the next and want to take all the items that you have with you, you have to become like this cargo ship and constantly running back and forth, picking up and dropping items. Why do shotguns take 2 inventory slots? Why do grenade launchers take 2 inventory slots? What masochist played this game and thought this was a good idea? This is a bad game. I know there's some people who like it, but I don't understand. I don't understand how you could actually stomach playing this game and having to just leave shit all over the place. It's so disorganized and annoying. On top of that, you can only leave a certain number of items per room. So even if you kind of want to sort of have like this universal item box idea, you can't even have that. You have to literally leave rooms, drop shit, come back into them, pick stuff up. It's so dumb. The enemies are super weird. You have your normal zombies and crows, but then you have these like leeches that are controlled by some guy through opera. It's really strange. Speaking of strange, this story makes no sense in this series at all. This game is called Resident Evil 0 because it's a prequel. It takes place 24 hours before the original game. Why is Rebecca the main character of this game? In Resident Evil 1, she is a rookie, and it makes total sense that she would be. It's her very first mission. Apparently, she can kill all sorts of enemies and be a total badass. But 24 hours later, she cowers in the corner when she's up against a hunter. Like, the continuity makes no sense. I wish that a different character got the spotlight here, because it would make more sense for us to see them go through an adventure than Rebecca. I don't know. That's pretty much all I can take about talking about Resident Evil 0. I hate this game. I don't ever want to play it. The fact that I even kind of had to force myself through a couple of the first areas is good enough for me. I've never beaten this. This is one of the few Resident Evils I can never beat because, quite frankly, I don't care. I don't give a shit. I don't like it at all. It's on PC, Xbox One, and PS4, so if you want to pick it up, it's out there. But truth be told, I think you should stay away from this game. It's not that good. The very next game that we have is Resident Evil Dead Aim, and this game immediately loses points for being the first game in this series to not have that iconic title announcement when you press start. Instantly loses a couple points for that. This is one of the other Resident Evil games I never beat, because this game sucks. And not in like a fun way like Resident Evil Survivor. This game just sucks. It's boring. The graphics are dull. They couldn't even mix the audio with the cutscenes properly. Way too many times did I play this game where I could barely hear what characters were saying because the music and sound effects were too fucking loud.
Beauty and brains.
And you are just brawn.
You will not destroy this for me.
don't even get me started on the controls for this game. It's worse than Resident Evil Survivor. It's kind of hard to explain, but when you play it yourself, it is dreadful. I am not kidding when I say this, that just overall, Resident Evil Survivor is a better game than Dead Aim. I just don't like it. Like, honestly, that's all there really is to it. The main character, Bruce, feels like a knockoff Leon, and the mystery spy chick or whatever feels just like a knockoff Ada. It's not good. It doesn't control well. You can't even, I don't even know what the story is because you can't even hear what's happening in the cutscenes. Speaking of, I turned on the subtitles, and the subtitles technically don't even match what's being said on screen. They couldn't even do subtitles correctly. This game sucks. That's all that really needs to be said. As for the last games that I'm going to talk about in this video are Resident Evil Gaiden and Resident Evil Gun Survivor 2 Code Veronica. I put them in the no thanks category. No thanks. A Resident Evil game on the Game Boy Color? No thanks. I played it for maybe 10 minutes, and I just didn't care. Same thing goes for Gun Survivor 2. Just didn't care. So, at the moment, I've pretty much covered all like the classic Resident Evil games that I grew up playing, or that I have played at some point. I will be making a part 2 to this, where I'm going to be covering everything from Resident Evil 4 and onwards. Because frankly, that's when this series can get really interesting, for better or worse. So with all that being said, thank you for watching. Keep an eye out for part 2. It'll be arriving sometime soon.